Section 4.5, Scales at the Piano. So far in this chapter, you've gotten pretty good at looking at a sharp key signature and figuring out the name of the major key. So looking at that last sharp going up a half step. Now that's all well and good. That will get you going pretty quickly. But the best way ultimately to master your major scales is by playing them at the piano or perhaps at another instrument. And so what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how to play all of these scales, these major scales involving sharps. And by the end of it, I bet you can memorize these fairly quickly. So let's take a look at this exercise. And what I have here is all of the major scales involving sharps. And in fact, I've also included C major, which has no sharps. So notice a couple of things. One, we've got treble clefs everywhere. So that means at first, at least, we're going to be playing these with our right hand. On top of that, you're also noticing the key signatures. So no sharps and no flats for C major, 1 sharp for G major, 2 sharps for D major, and so on all the way up, 7 sharps for C sharp major. And you might also notice that we have finger numbers. So we have above each note of the scale an instruction to play that note with a particular finger of your right hand. So easy enough, we've got finger number 1, which of course is your thumb. Thumb is always 1, pinky is always 5. So thumb is going to play the C, second finger is going to play the D, third finger is going to play the E. Your thumb is going to sneak underneath and play that F, second finger, and etc. So if you look at the finger numbers, first of all, you might find a pattern right away. And that pattern is that for the first 6 scales, so from C major all the way up to B major, they use exactly the same fingering pattern. These are just the commonly accepted fingerings for major scales used by most every pianist. So all of these 6 involve exactly the same sequence: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can see it there: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and for all of the other 5. Now, the only 2 that don't fit this bill happen to be the scales that begin on black keys. F sharp major doesn't have that same pattern. C sharp major doesn't have that same pattern for reasons that we'll get into later. But for right now, let's see if we can learn these first 6. So I'll ask you to practice with me a little bit just to get the fingering pattern down. It's really not that hard. So do it with me. You can have your right hand just in the air. It doesn't have to be at the piano necessarily. So it'll go like this: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do that again. Ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more time. Ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So not a very difficult pattern to learn, and that again will get you through these first 6 scales. Now let's do a more difficult variation of that to prepare you to play these at the piano, and actually to prepare you to memorize all of these, which is what I strongly recommend. When you are going through your fingers, instead of reciting the number of the finger that you're using, we're going to trust that our physical memory will pretty much take care of that for us. Instead, we're going to recite the name of the note that we're playing at any given moment. So for instance, let's take this C major scale. We know that there are no sharps, so all we need to do is to recite our musical alphabet from C up to the next C. And at the same time, we're going to be using our little fingering pattern. So here it goes. We're ready? And C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Let's do that again. Ready? And C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So pretty easy so far, because you just have to remember to go in the right sequence with your letters, and you need to remember that the musical alphabet restarts after the letter G. Now, let's go on to the next scale, G major. Well, as you know from the key signature, G major has 1 sharp in it. It's F sharp. So that means when you're reciting your notes, don't just say F, but instead say F sharp. That will remind you to be looking for that special black key as you play the scale. So before, of course, we were doing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now what we're going to do is, just like with the C major we did a moment ago, say the letters. And when you hit a sharp note, especially this F sharp right here, which is the only sharp in the current scale, you're going to imagine playing a black key rather than a white key. So your physicalization, I suppose, will be a little bit different. Maybe the black key will feel a little bit higher than the white keys. So let's try that out. Ready? Go. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. We'll go a little bit more slowly. Ready? Go. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So what you can do is to continue that method for D major, A major, etc. Let's go on to B major just to give ourselves a really big challenge. So in B major, you have to remember to account for these 5 sharps. What are they? Well, you know from that sentence, fat cats go down alleys. So F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, and A sharp. So when you get to these scales, sometimes it might even make more sense to think of the notes that are not sharped. So there's so many that are sharped. Which ones are not? Well, you can notice that B is not sharped and E is not sharped either. So let's do that same drill. We're going to use 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let's recite the letters that we're playing at any given moment. So it'll be like this: B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B. And again, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B. So that method will get you through the first 6 scales. Now, let's take a look at the bottom 2. I mentioned earlier that these 2 scales have different fingerings. They begin on black keys of the piano keyboard. So there's this ongoing tradition in piano fingering that when possible you want to avoid having the thumb play on a black key. Of course, you can play black keys with your thumbs in real music. It's not a problem. But in scales, that tendency has kind of persisted over time. So these are your standard fingerings for F sharp major and C sharp major. So that means for F sharp major, you're starting on the note F sharp, and you're doing 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So you have like 2 cross unders to take care of within that octave. Here, for C sharp major, similar fingering in that we begin with 2, 3, and then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Now what I'm going to do is to show you how to play all of these scales in just a moment. I'll give you a heads up. Number 2, yes, absolutely memorize these, use the correct fingering. And I'll give you a heads up on the left-hand variation here. So for number 3, if you want a challenge, you can play these scales with your left hand. A couple of principles to keep in mind. One is that, as we just said, when possible, avoid playing a black key with the thumb. And the other principle is something that will be quite obvious to you. Just in general, when possible, start with the finger that's in the lowest position on the piano keyboard. So there's a reason why most of our scales have been started with finger number 1 in the right hand, because the thumb lives in the lowest position on the piano keyboard. So most of your left-hand scales will begin on your pinky, which of course naturally falls furthest to the left or lowest on the piano keyboard. So that's your heads up for number 3. Let me demonstrate now all of these 8 scales at the piano. I'm going to adjust the camera a little bit. I know that the angle won't be 100% ideal, but I think you can at least get the gist of it, and I'll narrate as I go. So here we go. So here's a C major scale, all white keys with the regular old fingering pattern. Now the G major scale, same fingering pattern, just using an F sharp to be played with our 4th finger near the very end. D major, accounting for 2 sharps, so F sharp and C sharp, same fingering pattern. A major, 3 sharps to keep in mind, F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp, still the same fingering pattern. E major now, 4 sharps. B major, which we touched on earlier, 5 sharps, so everything sharped except for B and E. And now into the trickier ones, F sharp major, so 6 sharps, starting with your 2nd finger, and you're going to play a bunch of black keys in this one. Everything is sharped except for B. And finally, C sharp major, another scale that begins on a black note. So you'll start that with a second finger, and everything is sharped, even that E sharp. So what you maybe mostly think of as the note F, this is going to appear in the scale. It's really correctly spelled as E sharp. So here we go. So those are your 8 scales for this chapter. I recommend that you play through them every day if possible. So much of the rest of the course depends on your ability to recall these pretty quickly, and the best way to recall them quickly is just having practiced them a bunch. It's not really enough just to think, oh, fat cats go down alleys eating bread, and last sharp up a half step. No, you want to have internalized them by playing them. So go to it and have fun with this.